the turn of a key and the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place, another day at the dentist had drawn to a close. The best part of the day. However, the best part of the night had yet to come. She took her time walking through Ponyville, enjoying the orange hue of a setting sun and the sound of settling throughout town. There was no rush. The anticipation of what was to come was almost as exciting as the event itself. Just the thought alone sent chills down her back. A few minutes later, and her destination became visible. Ponyville's local flower shop. The sign on the door read closed. Maybe to every pony else, Colgate thought with amusement as she pushed open the door, which was left unlocked for none other than herself. The ringing of the bell at the front of the shop alerted Rose of her guess. She let out a small squeal of joy as she rushed to greet her. The two ponies smiled when they saw one another, greeted each other with a kiss and a foreleg wrapped around the other's back. When they broke contact, Colgate was giddy to see Rose's cheeks lit up the color of a rose, the color of half the flowers in the shop. So adorable. Rose looked away with a bashful smile and even brighter cheeks. You say that all the time. Because it's true. Colgate nuzzled the side of her neck. Ready? Rose's smile turned from bashful to mischievous. I was ready an hour ago. I took the scenic route. Colgate shrugged. Nonetheless, you're here now. Rose smiled. Let's go. Rose led Colgate through the shop towards the back room, making no effort to hide her faint arousal from Colgate. At the very back of the shop, Rose opened a trapdoor to stairs that led to a basement, lit by candlelight that caused the shadows to dance along the wall. At the bottom of the stairs, Colgate took a minute to absorb the pleasant assault on her senses. The basement was not large, but neither was it small. Vines that bloomed flowers of all colors lined the walls, complementing the redwood paneling. The floor of the basement remained unfinished by design, so that flowers of all sorts grew from the soil beneath their hooves, accompanied by soft textured blue grass. In a seemingly unorthodox manner, candles were spread throughout the room, kept safely in the air by their respective candle stands. Along with all the plants in the room, the candles gave the most intoxicating scents Colgate had ever smelt, the most predominant ever being lavender, which acted as a mild aphrodisiac. At the center of the room lay the single piece of furniture within these walls. A queen-sized bed with a mattress as soft as a cloud and a marvelous polished wood frame. The bed was made with magenta-colored sheets, pillows, and a simple yet elegant floral patterned comforter. To her amusement, she saw that Rose hadn't been able to resist spreading red, black, and white rose petals across the bed and the floor surrounding. On all four of the bedposts, chains and cuffs were secured to each. At the foot of the bed sat a small trunk, where instruments of their play lay in wait. Rose stepped aside and gestured toward her bed. Colgate was all too happy to comply. As she passed by Rose, she felt a stinging pain across her flank that enticed her to squeal. She turned on instinct and saw Rose with an upraised forehoof, a little too happy. Sorry, princess. Colgate lowered her head. Rose gave an approving nod and pointed towards the bed. Colgate slumped towards the bed, turning her head to hide a giddy smile. Just to spite Rose, she raised her forehoof to get on the bed. As expected, she was met with another stinging slap across her flank. "Who told you could get up here?" Rose asked in a commanding tone, but failed to hide her amusement. She knew Colgate had broken the rule on purpose. Colgate turned and lay down on her stomach, looking up at Rose. "My apologies, Princess," she answered with the most pathetic whimper she could muster. "Now, get up there like a good little pony and wait," Rose ordered. "Yes, Princess." Like a good little pony, she did as she was told. As she lay there, she heard Rose rummaging through the chests at the end of the bed, picking up the toys she would be using tonight. Colgate was hoping for a few of her own personal favorites, but didn't dare to make requests of Princess Rose. Or did she? Colgate had to stifle a giggle at the thought. At long last, she heard the thud of the lid closing on the trunk. Rose soon climbed atop of the end of the bed. Across her back, there was a spiked collar with a leash, and a rider's crop Rose conveniently called the vine. Clenched in her muzzle was a red ball gag and an 8-inch strap-on dildo with various sized nubs all around it. Rose called this the Thorn. Colgate thought the names, cliché as they were, considering Rose's profession, quite amusing. Rose dropped the Thorn, gag, and collar on the mattress, but took the vine and hoof. She approached the blue-furred unicorn who lay feigning cowardice of the advancing princess, with her rear hooves tucked to her belly and her forehooves over her muzzle. Colgate quit her act when she saw the look of concern in Rose's eyes, who stood over her. With a sigh, she raised her forehoof to Rose's cheek, stroking it gently. "Rose, it's okay. I want it." I know. It's just, you don't like hurting me." Colgate finished with a smile. "Are you alright with this? Cause if you don't, we can... No!" Rose cut her off quickly. "I promise." "Then, just relax for me." Colgate pulled Rose's muzzle down to her own, closing her eyes and pressing their lips together in a soft and gentle embrace. As their muzzles parted, Colgate opened her eyes, giving Rose a cute look of innocence. "Please?" Rose smiled and gave her a peck on the nose. "Okay." Colgate smiled and gave a cute little laugh, which was met with another yet much more painful sting to her flank, which forced a yelp from her throat as she looked up at Rose with wide eyes. "You find me funny, pet?" Rose barked. Colgate didn't dare speak, and instead shook her head frantically. The candlelight that danced all around them cast shadows across Rose's face and almost seemed to illuminate her blood-red mane, making her look all the more intimidating. "I should think so." Rose nodded. "There is something we must address." What would that be, Princess?" Colgate whimpered. Rose raised the crop threateningly. "If I did not ask the question, then I do not expect an answer." Colgate flinched away from the crop, though in all actuality she wanted to feel its wrath across her flank. She nodded slowly. I knew I would need this, Rose said in exhaustion as she retrieved the ball gag. "Open your muzzle." Colgate shook her head no, and as her punishment, she was met with 2 more cracks of the whip. When she opened her muzzle in pain, Rose shoved the gag into her mouth. She released the crop and took Colgate's mane in hoof, lifting her head from the bed to wrap the strap around her neck to secure the gag in place. That should keep you quiet. She traced the vine down the fur on Colgate's chest and belly, circling one of her nipples with the tip of the crop before proceeding onward, yet stopping just before her pussy. The pleading look in Colgate's eyes made her smile with mischief. Did you not hear your princess waiting tonight? It is not polite to be late for an appointment with royalty. Fear flashed in Colgate at the accusation. She tried to talk for her gag, but a quick flick of the crop to the top of her muzzle silenced her. Perhaps I should chain you to these posts and have you think a while about your punctuality. Rose took a step forward towards the edge of the bed. Colgate tried to shout for her gag. While her distress was all an act, she heard a hint of sincere worry in the cry. Rose laughed and turned back around. Do not fret, your princess is kind and will not drop to the level of those beneath me. However, you shall not be escaping punishment tonight. She dragged the crop across Colgate's left side as she took up the collar. Colgate made no attempt to stop her as she wrapped the collar around her neck, fastening it in place just beneath the straps of her gag. Rose pulled Colgate's head up with the leash, and Colgate snorted in reply. A costly mistake. 3 more cracks of the wine corrected her, making Colgate moan. Roll over, Rose ordered. Colgate complied. Colgate felt the tip of the crop graze her fur from the base of her tail over her mane to the tip of her right ear, and shivered in anticipation. Rose stood over Colgate's back and leaned over, giving her ear a quick nip between her teeth, then swatted Colgate's flank when her ear twitched. You know, my pet, you have quite the horn there, Rose whispered in her ear, dropping the crop and tracing the tip of her hoof up its length. Colgate had to bite down on the gag to keep from whimpering. Quite fun to play with too. She traced her hoof back down, then grasped it firmly when she got to its base, causing Colgate to moan. Rose lowered herself and rested her body atop Colgate's. To make sure she would not squirm too much, she spread Colgate's hind leg up a bit with her own. Without warning, she took the whole of Colgate's horn in her mouth. When Colgate squeaked through her gag and attempted to pull away, Rose held her still with a leash. She pulled up slowly, keeping her lips firmly sealed around the horn until she reached the tip, in which she licked before going back down on the horn. Colgate was biting down on the gag, gasping and wittering under Rose, while gripping the sheets of the bed beneath her in her hooves as the assault on her horn continued. She felt her tongue swirl around the base, sending waves of blissful indulgence down her body and between her haunches. The fire and pressure began to grow. Rose must have liked the response she was getting, seeing as she redoubled her efforts, bobbing up and down in a steady rhythm while keeping pressure along the horn with her tongue. The sounds coming from Colgate along with her constant withering made Rose a little hot herself, and she couldn't help but to grind on Colgate's back a little while punishing her. She was sure her pet wouldn't mind. Rose started feeling Colgate tense up beneath her and immediately stopped working on her horn. Not yet, my pet. Rose stroked Colgate's mane while she whimpered in protest. When she started to stand up, Rose picked up the vine and whipped it across Colgate's ass, who fell back to the bed. You don't come until the princess allows it. Rose ignored another whimper of protest and got off of her. She wasn't about to betray the fact that she didn't want to stop herself. On your back. Colgate's mind was clouded from their activities, her heavy breathing, and the pressure in her lower body was extreme, but she complied without issue. Once she was on her back, Rose took one of her forehooves and cuffed it to the bed, then the other. When Rose got down to Colgate's hind leg, she could smell the sweet musk of Colgate's sex, though she wasn't sure that she herself was not contributing to the smell. After she had restrained the last hoof, she crawled back over Colgate. My, some ponies horny. All the while, she traced the hoof down Colgate's coat and just grazed the tip of her mare hood's outer folds. Colgate whimpered and her back arched, but Rose did not continue, and instead brought her hoof back up. I bet you're wishing you had been a little more punctual tonight. Rose dipped her head and nibbled at the neck and shoulders. Colgate was impressed with how well Rose had gone into character, though she just wished she would just finish the job. Rose knew better than to play with her horn, knowing full well how sensitive she was. Her loins were on fire, and she felt she could burst at any moment if just given a little push. But you're not getting off that easily, Rose whispered in her ear. When she lifted her head to look down at Colgate, she wore a wicked grin. While she didn't like hurting Colgate, the dominance she had intoxicated her. The pleading look in Colgate's eyes only enhanced the feeling. Rose wrapped her hooves around Colgate's neck and removed the gag. If you want it, you have to beg. And she threw the gag off the bed. When she failed to make a sound, she gave her flank another whack. Colgate yelped. Please. Please what? Rose snickered. Colgate growled in frustration. Just fuck me already. Rose whipped Colgate again. You don't give the orders, pet. I said beg. I'm sorry, princess. I just need it. She whimpered. Oh, it's okay, my pet, Rose replied, stroking the side of Colgate's cheeks. It was adorable to see Colgate with her cheek, ears, and top of her muzzle all blushy, with her beautiful, bright blue begging eyes. Aw, I can't say no. She thought she heard Colgate giggle as she went to retrieve the thorn from the end of the bed. She slipped it on over her hind leg and secured the strap just above the base of her tail to hold it still. It was a little awkward to walk with while having it on, and it made her feel funny, but Colgate seemed to like it. She put her game face back on before she turned to face her restrained pet. She left the crop behind. She wouldn't be needing it any longer. She blushed slightly when she saw Colgate staring down at her, longing in her eyes. With a sense of comfort, she stood over Colgate. She let her hips sway back and forth to tease Colgate's pussy with the end of the thorn. Colgate whimpered and then growled in frustration. Rose didn't let her finish her growl before bucking her hips, pushing the whole of the strap-on into Colgate's mare hood. Colgate yelped, closed her eyes, and arched her back, pulling against her restraints, which held without fail. Rose couldn't help but giggle at the unicorn's helplessness. Slowly at first, Rose began to pump her hips, increasing the tempo steadily. She lowered her muzzle to Colgate's and licked the tip of it to let her intentions be known, seeing as Colgate had yet to open her eyes. Colgate got the idea and parted her muzzle. Rose pressed their lips together and slipped her tongue inside of her pet's mouth. Her pet wasn't so much focused on the kiss, however, and Rose easily dominated it, playing with Colgate's tongue as she pleased with her own while bucking her senseless with the thorn. Even though Rose was not the one getting fucked, the end of the strap-on was rubbing hard against her own pussy, which caused her to moan a couple of times herself. Eventually, she grew too distracted to keep the kiss going herself, choosing instead to bite down on Colgate's shoulder as she continued, hoping to stifle her own noises of pleasure as she came. She'll be embarrassed if Colgate found out she had come first when she had been the dominant one the whole time. Colgate's yelps, whimpers, and whines became more and more frantic with every thrust. She almost felt as if she could feel every individual nub on the strap-on that filled her and stretch her inner walls with every push. She tensed up again, pulling in vain at her restraints. She clenched her jaw shut, trying to hold back the inevitable climax that lured so close to the end. With one last cry, Colgate's body began to spasm beneath her princess, her body racked by wave after wave of release. Rose refused to slow or stop until Colgate's orgasm subsided. When it did, she sighed in relief. Removed thorn from Colgate, undid the straps and tossed it aside before collapsing next to her, trying to catch her breath. Through trying to catch her breath, she heard Colgate giggle through her own attempt to catch her breath, and remembered she was still restrained. Sorry, Rose blushed as she got back on her hooves, unhooking her collar, then each shackle and throwing them off the ends of the bed. When the last restraint was removed, she felt something crash into her side and bowl her over. When she recovered, she saw Colgate standing over her grinning. Now, let's see what I can do for my princess. Actually, that won't be necessary, Rose replied, feeling her face heat rush to her cheeks. Is something wrong? Colgate asked, concerned and unhappy. Oh, no. Nothing is wrong. Rose grazed her cheeks with her forehooves. It's just won't be necessary. She hid her muzzle in Colgate's chest. Colgate's look of concern turned into that of confusion. You don't want to? She gently pushed Rose's head back so she could see her. I kinda already did. Rose bit her lower lips and pressed her muzzle back into Colgate's chest. Then she felt Colgate's chest hum with laughter and heard it explode from her muzzle. Rose whimpered and hugged Colgate closer. Oh, Rose, stop. It's fine, Colgate cooed, gently coaxing Rose's head from her chest, eventually succeeding and almost couldn't take the cute look of shame across Rose's muzzle when she could see her again. Rose, looking for a distraction, noticed a rosebud that had been caught in Colgate's mane, which hung over her. In a careful manner, she raised her head and took the petal in her muzzle, then smiled sheepishly up at her as she ate it. Colgate squeaked and wrapped the Rose in a constricting hug. Why are you so freaking cute? She asked, rocking Rose back and forth, who giggled in her forelegs. A few seconds later, Colgate released her and gave the end of her muzzle a quick peck on the lips before laying down beside her. Rose giggled and brushed the mane out of Colgate's face, then rested her hoof on Colgate's flank. She pulled back, however, when Colgate yelped, I'm sorry. She had already forgotten that she had given Colgate's flank a few too many whips with the vine. It's okay. It's just a little bit sore. She smiled reassuringly. Okay, if you're sure. What now? Rose asked. Well, let's put out these candles, go to my house and get cleaned up and get to bed. Colgate replied, I'm kinda tired. Sounds good. She was hoping Colgate would invite her over, One of the few things she loved more than these special visits was when she could fall asleep in her special Some Pony's embrace.